This is a magic screen. When you touch it, it knows exactly where you're touching. But how? If you look closely at this screen, you can see all these tiny little dots. They're so small you can barely see them. And there are millions of them inside your phone's screen. In fact, there are 3 million of them in this screen right here. So when you touch this screen, it doesn't actually know where you're touching until you press one of those little dots. When you do, it creates a tiny electrical signal that tells the phone's software that you've touched this screen. And it knows exactly where because each one of those dots has a specific location. It's like a mini earthquake. When you press it, the phone knows exactly where to deliver the energy for the display to light up. The same thing happens when you use a stylus. You can even see the dots when you use a white marker. And if you really want to see them, you can download a special app that makes them visible. But why? Why does the screen need to know where you're touching? Well, it needs to know where you're touching to show you things. For example, when you play a game, it needs to know where to put the character and where to show the buttons. Or when you're watching a video, it needs to know where to put the subtitles. Or when you're reading any book, it needs to know where to put the text and where to put the pictures. And believe it or not, it also needs to know this stuff for 3D objects. For example, when you're playing a 3D game, it needs to know exactly where you're looking so it can show you the game from that angle. But believe it or not, some 3D objects have touch screens too. Here's a 3D printed version of the Tesseract from the movie Interstellar. And just like the movie, it has a 3D touch screen. That means when you touch it, the screen knows exactly where you're touching inside and outside, which means you can pinch to make things bigger and smaller, just like on a smartphone. And just like with smartphones, it uses tiny little dots. This one has 12,000 of them, but they're spread out over a much bigger surface area. Now, just like with a smartphone, it uses a tiny electrical signal to tell where you're touching. But doing it on this shape was really hard, so they had to use a special type of sensor called an optical sensor, instead of using electricity. It uses light to sense where you're touching, and it works way better on curved surfaces. So the next time you use your phone, remember, it knows exactly where you're touching because of millions of tiny dots inside the screen.